Good evening, welcome to the Winthrop Town Council meeting for June 3rd, 2025. It's currently 6:30 p.m. We're in the Harvey hearing room. Roll call, please.
Council Aiello.
Here.
Council DeMarco.
Here.
Council Costigan.
Here.
Council Castaneri.
Here.
Council Swope. Here. Council DeRoss.
Here.
Vice President Belcher. Here. President Lettieri.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Council DeRoss.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have two sets of minutes to approve. I don't think we ever did the May 6th. So approval of the May 6th meeting, 2025 as circulated. Is there a motion? Motion by Vice President Belcher, second by Council Castaneri. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Minutes for the last council meeting on May 20th have been circulated. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Council Castaneri, second by Council Swope. Second by Council Swope. Any discussion on the minutes? Council Swope.
Denise, when Joe said something about a tree committee, about the donations that you mentioned, did you mention something about a tax deduction on that? If it's, and it's not in the minutes, and can you just repeat that again so we can put it in the
Sure.
minutes?
You want the tax deduction?
Well, Joe had mentioned it, so.
Yeah, I defer to the town manager if you want to describe it, I'm happy to describe it.
That's fine, you talk about the fidelity thing?
Yeah,
that tree donation,
you can send money to the fund.
Right.
Fund, one through taxes, through checks, or you can send electronically if you subscribe to donation funds. And you will get a receipt back from the town giving you a tax donation from that.
That's like
So they are a 501c or something like
The
that.
Winthrop Fund, which is part of the government. is a
Okay, fine,
501c3.
Okay, I think that should be added because that's interesting.
I will add that in.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Any other
Thanks to Tony
discussion?
for reviving that, and then we've on it for a long time.
Approval on the minutes as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. All right, general information recommendations. We are fortunate to have Matt Gorkowitz here with us tonight, along with some of his other Finance Commission members. Through our charter, the Finance Commission is a joint committee, so to speak, of the council's Subcommittee on Finance along with the Citizens Finance Committee. And on the Citizens Finance Committee, Karen Chavez is the chair, Brent Farrell is a member, Bill Galt, Matt Gorkowitz, Joe Hanlon, John Macero, and Shannon Poolhouse. Finance Commission, again, is a composition of that committee along with the Subcommittee on Finance. The chairperson of the Finance Commission is Matt. Matt has done an incredible job with us for the last several years. I think of our old friend Bob Wynn, and it reminds me of Matt, just very even-tempered, even keel. You do an incredible job listening to 11 other people, 10 other people, whatever it happens to be. You take in all the information, you decipher it incredibly well, you're incredibly organized. We're lucky to have you, so thank you for all the work that you guys do, along with the other committee members that are here tonight. The Finance Commission over the past couple of months at least has met at least weekly and sometimes more than that, and have put in many hours to go over this budget. The operating budget is roughly 67 million, the total budget is approaching 80 million. So it's a lot of work, and next week we'll have a special meeting to vote on this budget, and the town will see, hopefully the council pass a budget in relatively short time next week, but it's not for a lack of effort over many weeks, and the majority of that effort is done by the work of you guys, so thank you. So I'm gonna give the floor to Mr. Gorkowitz to give us a presentation of the Finance Commission's findings.
Organize myself here for a minute. do I advance the slides, just let you know what.
Just let me know, yep. Mhm.
If you just advance to the next slide two, I'll just start off. I don't wanna repeat anything the council president just said as a way of introduction and the work that we've done over the past several weeks, past couple of months, but do want to just personally also extend my thanks to members of the Finance Commission, the members that you can see listed here under the Citizens Advisory Finance Commission, as well as the Finance Subcommittee of the town, combined make up the Finance Commission. And so I just want to thank all my colleagues for their work. This group has been together for a little while now, and so I feel like folks have gotten along really well. It's a good collaboration that happens with members of the group, and so just want to thank them for all that. I also want to just thank members of the town, particularly town manager Anthony Marino, the superintendent Howard, assistant town manager Cheryl McCormick, finance director Sarah Johnson, assistant CFO Robbie Powers. Most of that finance team attends each and every one of our meetings and provides a lot of context and works through a lot of the questions that we have in real time. So I want to thank you, thank all of them for their input. It would be a much more difficult process without them, and they're just very collaborative and willing to assist us with anything we need. So thank you for all of that. With that, I'll just quickly jump to the next slide 3, to just highlight, the Finance Commission has important roles and responsibilities. It's established in the town charter, and the powers of the Finance Committee through the charter gives us the ability to have full and complete access to all the information involving all aspects of budget preparation process as it becomes available. I think we all take that very serious. There's a lot of members of the commission who ask for a lot of follow-up information, request additional data. And I want to thank the town and the department heads for being responsive to that mandate that we have coming out of the town charter. It's something we take very seriously. This next slide just highlights a little bit of our process. The process is more or less the same as what we followed the last couple of years. It kicks off really with the spring forum and the filing of the budget with the town council. We then deliberate through a series of meetings, public meetings with department heads. We build in some time for us to, as a group, to deliberate on the various conversations and testimony we receive, and we formulate the recommendations before you today. We have public hearings with each of our department heads, and again, get tremendous support from the town as we prepare these recommendations. This slide here, you can just simply see that the department heads here on the left that we held actual public hearings with. They came in prepared with testimony to talk about their budgets. They talked about their accomplishments over the past year, goals for the next year. The ones on the right, we did not bring in for actual hearings. They were optional. And this does vary a little bit each year. We have a conversation at the beginning of the year about different issues that might be happening in different departments, and we make a decision given the limited amount of time we have to select those departments that we truly have and public testimony. But with that, we're here to talk about the FY26 budget, so I'll just jump into it. And at the very high level, I just want to provide some just key takeaways. First, the Finance Commission supports the recommendations for the town manager's FY26 budget, recommending only minor changes, in fact, one change really. The budget is important to understand. It's structurally balanced, relying on recurring revenues to support operational needs. Talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. It's also important to recognize this is a maintenance level budget. That means the budget for FY26 sustains the same level of services as the previous year, and there aren't really any major expansions to speak of. This is a maintenance level budget. And really it funds a lot of our contractual obligations and costs that are inflationary in need. It funds various contracts like the trash contract. It funds in the case that we have collective bargainings that are signed and agreed upon, they're funded. If not, the costs of those are built into the budget. But it really does represent. So while you see costs going up in departments year over year, those costs are not necessarily for new or expansionary items. It's really to maintain the same level of services as were provided in the prior year. With that, there are a couple of other highlights I think worth noting on page, thank you, page 9. First, as I mentioned, it continues to live within sustainable resources. I think that's important. The town now has its AA plus bond rating, which is a good bond rating. very good bond rating. Budget is structurally balanced, again, referring on recurring revenues. It does not rely on any one-time revenues or free cash. That's important because prior budgets that we've adopted and reviewed as a commission did rely on some ARPA funds when they were available, and other one-time funds, which create a structural problem for the town. This budget, I think, is the first budget that I've worked on that has no one-time revenues or free cash supporting its operations, making it structurally balanced. It continues the base budgeting document that was introduced in FY24, where the town budget and the school budget are clearly delineated with all of the appropriate cost of allocation to the various expenses. I think this is important, particularly in light of the override and support for the schools that we recently received with the voter approved override. It includes a 15% increase for health insurance, which is on top of a 9.6% increase that we saw last year. I think this is consistent with what we're seeing in commercial health insurance markets, but certainly a considerable cost that has been built into this budget to support those needs. It reduces the general fund support to the solid waste fund, the trash fund, by $200,000, and reduces our reliance on retained earnings. Last year, there was about $200,000 of retained earnings being used to help support the trash fund, the solid waste fund. This year, that is down to $85,000. So again, we as a commission highlighted some structural issues with the solid waste fund last year, and this budget goes a long way to making that fund solvent and sustainable over multiple years. And it continues to provide subsidies to parks and recreation and skating, $30,000 respectively. So those are a couple of notable highlights. Just talking generally about revenues, sort of where do the revenues come from? The main source of revenue to support a roughly $82 million budget for the town comes from the general fund. That's our largest source of revenue, so about 81%. We do have enterprise funds, which are designed specifically to fund certain operations of the town, like the solid waste fund, sewer and water. And we have a series of smaller revolving funds and some capital stabilization. Just drilling down a little bit on these revenues and focusing on the general fund for a moment, if you go to the next page, you'll see that the general fund revenues totaling $66.4 million, increased by about $6.4 million over year over year, or about 9.7%. I do want to point out that in the FY24 column, the state aid is listed as 15.6. It really should, that number should be 14.4. It's actually correct. It's the gross number instead of the net number. So there's a little bit of a typo there. So I do want to point that out, and we can make the corrections before we post this formally. But that brings the total total increase over FY25 to be $6.4 million. You can see 66% of the town's revenues come from property tax. I think that's important to understand. The second largest source is state aid, which increases modestly by $183,000 year over year. And then the third largest category is our local receipts, which I'll talk about in a minute, which I'll talk about on the next page. So you can see the local receipts totaling about $7.5 million for fiscal year 26. Really, these are, there's only two categories of revenues here that make up the almost 71% of all local receipts. Motor vehicles at 30%, totaling $2.2 million. And the pilot payments that we get from Massport as well as MWR mitigation make up another $3 million. Those two combined make up almost 70% of all of the local receipts. So the local receipts are relatively predictable, but there's not a lot of change. The pilot payments and mitigation payments are pretty stable. You know what they're going to be year to year. And while the motor vehicle excise increases slightly, it doesn't increase by a lot. So local receipts, while they do increase year over year, there's just not a lot to make up for other needs of the town. I will highlight also, and this will be consistent with what we see in our new growth numbers, that license and permits are up almost 166,000 this year. That's a much larger increase than we've seen in prior years. Focusing on the levy limit for a moment, again, talking about property tax being 60% of all the revenues we rely on for the general fund. You can see here the calculation of this year's levy limit for FY26. I'll start by saying, the town doesn't have any excess levy limit. It may seem odd, but other towns in the Commonwealth don't always utilize all of their levy capacity. There are some that have excess capacity. I can tell you that Winthrop uses all of its levy capacity and has for at least the years that I've been serving on the commission. It's important to then note that, you know, you can see the 2.5 levy totaling to $892,000. We also have estimated new growth at 350. Interesting point on both of these numbers, if you were to go back to FY '23, you know, the new growth number, or the, you know, what we were generating through the 2.5 levy was closer to 800,000. So by, you know, that compounding amount has probably increased, you know, since '23 by $92,000, so roughly $100,000 over a 3-year period. The new growth at 350 is coming down a bit from where it was last year. If you go back to FY '23, new growth had for a long time been about 250,000 a year, roughly 240,000. It spiked over the last couple of years based on a lot of the work that the assessors have done and the treasurer's office has done in terms of collecting some of the backlogs that was going on through inspectional services. This number's starting to come down a little bit now, but you know, combined, you know, this totals about $1.1 million of new revenue for the town, 1.2 million on any given year. So it's not a lot. There are a lot of challenges with maintaining the cost of services when you have the ability to generate revenue is limited in this way. You will see here that the $3.5 million override from the school is part of this year's levy limit and has been factored in. I will also say, and I know folks have asked about this, all of that 3.5 is dedicated to the school budget, and you will see that in the school's department's budget. The override, this past April, residents of Winthrop made significant investments in the override, and you can see how that 3.5 million factored into the $4 million levy limit that has been generated for the town. This override, should be noted, is necessary to maintain level funded services for our school and preserving essential staff and programs in FY '26. This funding was absolutely critical to avoid, you know, devastating cuts to the school and potentially indirectly to other town departments. And this safeguards a lot of community services. So this override was critically important to this fiscal year. Last year, when we met as a commission, we recognized that the budget that was adopted by the town was about 1.5 million less than what the level service budget was needed. And so this went a long way to be able to correct that and continue to preserve essential staffing and programs for the schools. Two other things that we should note here, they're not included in the $40.6 million levy limit, but certainly are things that we will be talking about, which is the $1.4 million stabilization fund, the education stabilization fund. The reason why this isn't part of the levy limit is it's not built into the budget for spending. This is money that will go directly to the educational stabilization fund per over the town council, and that will provide necessary funding to help make sure that we have future financial stability for our school department and indirectly for our town departments, as it'll take a lot of the pressure off of the what I've just described as our ability to have constrained revenue growth. And then we also approved a new firehouse, a debt exclusion for a new firehouse, which will be, begin in modestly this year in terms of in FY '26 in terms of its impact on the town, but will ramp up as the fire stations are constructed and go online. But none of those are in the actual budget document for the town. These are things that have happened through the voter-approved overrides, but are outside of what we're talking about in terms of the four corners of our operating budget. So shifting a little bit to expenditures, FY '26 general fund expenditures across all funds total $82 million, $81.9 million, which is an increase of $5.2 million over FY '25. General fund expenditures for the town and the school departments total $66.4 million, which is an increase of $4.9 million. So if you just exclude the enterprise funds and other funds, it's $66.4 million, which means the town departments total about $26 million of that, which is 40% of total expenditures, and the school departments at $40.2 million make up about 60% of the total expenditures for a town, which is, I think, consistent with what you see in many other towns. The rest, the difference between the 81.9 and the 66 are made up of the enterprise funds and the revolving funds, again, which have revenue streams that offset those and cover those expenditures. You can see in this slide what I just referred to in a table. The table shows the town departments, including the non-departmental and shared expenses, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And you can see the enterprise funds along with the revolving funds and the capital stabilization. One thing I think, just staying on this slide for a moment, when you look at the employee benefits, the total employee-related benefits are projected to increase by $260,000 year over year. I think the biggest increase we see is in the employee health insurance costs, as I mentioned, 15% increase. It increases year over year by about $475,000, and then the retiree health benefits increase by about $190,000. On the shared services side, total shared expenses grow by only $16,000. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I will just say one of the reasons why we focus on those two categories, because in the past, there's been much more fluctuations in our shared services, whether it be electricity or fuel or property insurance. These are lines that in the past have had some extraordinary growth. This year, I think we've kind of caught up with some of that growth. We've built in some of that spending, and the increase this year over the last is relatively modest. It's essentially level funded year over year. Where we do see some pressures again on the health benefit side. Shifting away from the town departments to give a quick summary of the education budget. The current school department totals about $42.2 million, which is an increase of $4 million, or about 10% over FY25. You can see in this table here, the salary expenses being about 58%, and when you factor in employee health insurance, you're at about almost 69% of the total school budget being salaries and employee benefits, specifically the health insurance benefits. One thing I will just note on this slide, and this isn't part of the school budget, but it's worth thinking about as we think about how much of our budget is spent on education. I did at the bottom highlight the Northeast Regional Vocational School and the Essex Aggie Technical School, along with the debt associated with the Voc School. That totals about $1.6 million now. In part, the debt has come on increasingly over the last couple of years, adding to the cost of this, as well as additional students being able to attend the Northeast Regional Voc School. But right now, that's an additional $1.6 million of educational expense that we fund that comes out of the town budget. That's not part of the school budget. But I do highlight it here so you have a perspective of what the total education funding is that we spend on the town. I think another point I would make on this particular slide is that nearly 1.5 million of expenses were returned or eliminated to balance the FY25 budget. So in FY26, we're starting off from a place where the school department had to prepay expenses and use prior year funds in order to live within the level service budget they received this year. So as part of the override, as part of the 26 budget, a lot of that is being restored. It also includes, additional funds for health insurance on the school side. They're experiencing a lot of the same increases that we are on the same town side, and those have to be absorbed on the school budget. And of course, there is some amount set aside for contingency planning. Almost all 7 unions are up for renegotiation this year in the school department. As far as salaries are concerned, base budget maintains most of the 25 positions, and including steps and lanes. As I mentioned, contractual salary increases are up for negotiations, and that remains to be determined. Increasing teacher positions, there was a special education teacher added, as well as 2 ABA behavioral techs that were necessary for our support for IEP services. And then there were some budget adjustments as it relates to federal grants to bring in some employees that were previously funded for federal grants back onto the school budget. I would just say, generally speaking, some common themes that we see across both the town and school budgets is that the health insurance, which when you look at both the school and town budgets combined, is almost $1 million increase over FY25. And if you think back to what I was highlighting when we talked about the levy limit and what we get from new growth, that's about $1.2 million of additional revenue that we get through our 2.5 and our new growth. So you can see that it's quite challenging to be able to take on new initiatives, fund expansion, and do things when you're constrained in that way, which also is another reason why the override was so critically important to the school department. We also see a lot of investment in technology. We've seen a lot of that over the last couple of years, and we continue to see both in service level contracts, licensing, the need to continue to keep up with and deploy the latest technology across our departments. As I mentioned, this is really a level funded budget across both the town and school department, and the year-over-year growth covers mostly things that are absolutely necessary to provide those services. With that said, the commission did have some recommendations for the town manager and the council to consider over the next fiscal year. In part, the first is that we do want to continue to build on and continue our structural balance while preparing for budget uncertainty. I think we can all agree in this environment there is plenty of uncertainty both economically and at both the federal and state level, and making sure that we have a budget that doesn't rely on any one-time revenues and is structurally sound is a really good place to start when you're having to deal with budget uncertainty. Continuing to build up our free cash, continuing to build up other retained earnings in our enterprise funds are all things that help us sort of weather uncertain times, and I think the town is in a good position in that respect, but want to keep the focus on continuing to do as much as we can. Inspectional Services Department, this is one area where the Finance Commission did have a recommendation to add a part-time position for code enforcement. It's the belief of the Finance Commission that this would essentially pay for itself, but we did talk with the town manager and agreed that there would be an allocation within the department to be able to support an additional part-time position, which is why there's no motion to change the appropriation, but it is one that we believe is important and agree with the town manager to be able to fund that. One area that I do want to highlight as a potential exposure for you to consider and to monitor throughout fiscal year 25 is our public health department. Our public health department does a lot of important work, and much of it is grant funded. And in an environment where a lot of the grants, both federally and state, are the unpredictability around what's happening with those grants is creating a lot of uncertainty. And we have a lot of the positions that do that work on behalf of public health funded from those grant programs. And so right now there are a couple of grants, 3 in total, that could be as much as $284,000 worth of expenses that we have some exposure now. The public health director in her testimony has talked about trying to find additional grant revenues and trying to get an extension on a couple of grants, which should help us in fiscal year 26. But I think it's important that all of the counselors keep an eye on those grants and think about alternative ways to be able to support those important positions in the event that those grants are not funded in FY 26. Solid waste has been we've had a recommendation every year on this. I will say, and it's important to note that the current solid waste fund for FY 25 had structural issues. As I mentioned, it relied on an appropriation from the town of almost $600,000, but it also relied on $200,000 of retained earnings, which created some structural problems for the fund. The proposal in front of the council now is to increase the trash fee from 160 to 190, which creates additional revenue, therefore allowing the trash fee to rely less on the general fund appropriation and to rely less on retained earnings, which does put it in a stronger structural balance position. So I think the recommendation of the Finance Commission is to continue to make sure that the retained earnings and the contribution from the general fund are allocated in a way that ensures that structural balance. We also think that it's important to continue the work that the town manager's already done in reaching out to the housing authorities and others to make sure that folks are paying their fair share into the fund, to make sure that we have the revenues necessary to keep the fund solvent. And finally, we're also recommending a multi-year fee schedule that will provide some predictability both to the residents, but also to demonstrate that the fund will be solvent. But I will say a lot of progress has been made in the last year. We entered the 25 budget without a contract and with a new contract needing to be negotiated, and there's been a lot of good work to get it to where it is, and we want to just keep the focus on making sure that fund does what it was intended to do. The other thing that recommendation we talked with the town manager about is a health insurance GIC commission. This year, this is, I think, the last year, according to the conversations we've had with the town manager, our participation in the GIC is coming up for renewal. And we think it makes a lot of sense to form a GIC commission that will do its due diligence around making sure that the decision to stay in or not is one that's based on data and informed on the merits. We also think it would be a good opportunity to take a look at and do an analysis of the town's contribution for health insurance. It's currently at 85%. Other towns do, 80, some 70, 25. Of course, doing so needs to be taken into a total compensation package and making sure that as far as recruitment and retention, that we have an understanding of what that would do in terms of impact on our ability to retain the type of talent that we have in town. But we think this is a recommendation that is certainly warranted and would be beneficial in terms of making an important decision about what to do with the GIC in the next coming year. We talked a lot about multi-year planning for the town, and particularly, I think, in light of the override that was recently approved, I think we feel an obligation to be able to not look at just the current year, but at least go 2 years out, and eventually, have a 5-year forecast, but certainly a 3-year forecast would give us much more insight as to, some of the constraints that we can anticipate through our ability to increase and grow revenue year over year, and be able to, take that into account with the growing costs of providing services for the town. We also think that as the presentation has gotten incredibly much better over the last couple of years, the town manager and his team have adopted the GFOA format for budgeting, which is a best practice. It's a standard that the Government Finance Officers Association put out that really talks about the transparency in budgeting and making sure that it's a user-friendly document, and it's certainly gotten much better. We'd like to see the school department, in some respects, also incorporated into that presentation. We know that the school operates on a different system and also has to produce information in a different way, and we get that, and so we know that this isn't something that can happen overnight, but we would love to be able to see the school department and the finance team for the town work on being able to package the school department in a way similar to what we've been seeing from the town, because it has gotten better and more transparent, and we'd like to continue to work on having a multi-year view of what that looks like. Again, I think from the school department, it would be important because of the education stabilization fund to understand, what would be some of the drivers that would cause the department to have to think about how to use that in future fiscal years. So I think that's sort of the final recommendation that we spent a lot of time talking about, and it came up in almost every department head meeting, which is just the IT needs of the town. I think there's a lot of discussion about in every department we see service contracts, licensing going up every year. We often hear about needing to upgrade a particular application that a department is using, and we think that it's probably come time to be able to bring a single point of responsibility to this, whether it be a CIO or somebody who can be assigned to do this, reporting to the town manager to create that accountability. Some towns have formed IT committees, which may be a good option to do. But whatever it is we do, there are a number of things that I think the commission sees as being sort of essential in terms of our ability to manage our IT. One is, we do think that the creation of a data warehouse for better analytics would be important. The creation for more easy to use dashboards, not only internally for department heads and for council members, but for the general public as well. The deployment and expanded use of AI potentially to promote better and more opportunities to engage residents in service of that the town is providing. And then of course digital automation. A lot of the town departments have gone down this path of starting to digitize a lot of their content. There's much more work to be done. So I think this is a recommendation that has frankly been discussed the last 2 or 3 years with the Finance Commission, and I think we're recognizing that the only way this recommendation doesn't become a perennial recommendation is to really have some focus from the leadership of the town, and to really just make it a priority. And so we want to be partners in seeing that happen. But with that, I probably certainly ran way over my time and I apologize for that, but I wanna just thank again everybody for their work on this and I'm sure there are some things I did leave out, so the memo does go into a bit more detail on a number of things that I just touched on very briefly here, so hopefully you've had a chance to review that and again, wanna just thank all of the commission members for all of the great work and partnership on this, so thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Again, fantastic job to you and your team. We thank you, member of the subcommittee from the council. It's a tremendous amount of work to go through that budget. And basically, you guys go through it line by line. We're gonna be having a conversation on the budget later this evening, and then we will have a special meeting next week to actually vote on the budget. But again, I can't thank you enough for your time. You know, I'm sure we could all pick an area or two that we'd like to try to get some more details on, or not necessarily happy with, but again, you stated it at the beginning, when you have 1.2 million in basically new roads, and you have new monies to the town, and you have $1 million in health insurance expense, it kind of limits your pool of money. Again, why it was so important to pass that override, and again, thanks to the citizens town for stepping up and doing that, because it was incredibly needed, as you can see through this presentation. But thank you again. Do you want to take a few questions, or do you want, and I'll just say a couple of things first on, I think the code enforcement officer, like you said, will pay for itself, and I'd like to increase that to full-time next year if it's at all possible. With short-term rentals coming in, ADUs coming in, you know, we've had talks over the last 10 years on Airbnbs and such, and you know, people seem to want more enforcement, and some of it is just due to manpower. So like you say, I think that's a position that could pay for itself. Solid waste, I'm not happy with the recommendations, and I'll be saying my piece on that as we get on. And the GIC commission, I know that's something that I've talked about with the town manager, and something that hopefully we'll be creating as we get into the fall, because it's definitely something needed. And the same thing with IT, we've talked about it for several years, and again, it's hard to make that investment when the funds are limited, but I mean, at some point, it's something that we just have to take a look at, and hopefully with some limited development that we have coming in, it might free up some funds. But I will open it up for a couple of questions, because we're gonna have a deeper conversation as we come on later in the meeting. Councilor Tessina.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to agree with the chairs and the Finance Commission's recommendations here. I want to actually thank Matt, Karen, John Massero, Ben Farrell, Will Gall, Joe Hanlon, Shannon Poulos, and my fellows on the Finance Committee. A lot of work goes into this from the commission members, and a lot of work goes into this from the department heads, the superintendent as well, and the town manager and his finance office. And I want to thank all those folks as well. Thank you for everything you've done to get us this far. Thank you for FY26. I know it's a level service budget, but it's a good budget to go forward to get a good year out of FY26. So thank you all.
Councilor Swope.
Thank you, Matt. I sat through all of your meetings and I have 10,000 notes and questions, which you will be happy to know I won't be asking. But I did want to mention something that I thought overall Tony's introduction, because I read the budget totally. Tony's overall introduction to the budget is exactly what you said, much more transparent, easier to read. Really liked it. It's kind of set the tone for it. What I would like to have seen, what I would like to have asked some of the committee chair of the chairs that came before you is, if they had $10,000 more, what would they do with it? If they had $10,000 or whatever number less, what would they cut? What are the efficiencies that they actually did this year? I mean, when I say efficiencies, what money did they save on X and they were able to give it to Y because it was more important? Those are the kinds of things that I think might help. And then also, there's a lot of statements of improvements here. We're gonna improve. But I'd like to see more data on that. Usually when my former life, I had to produce actual data. If I said I was going to improve something, they wanted to know how. Always a tough question, but I think that some of that would be helpful in this, so that when we will go back next year, when we say you've improved, I could say, yeah, 5% more community houses that we looked at, whatever the number, but overall, thanks, good job.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments. I think, every year, similar to the way the town manager has improved his budget, I think we've been also trying to, as a commission, improve our process. There are things that we focus on every year that get a little bit better in terms of adding it to the presentation. This year we focused, a lot more on the school budget and really trying to get a handle on that and understand how it fits into the larger budget, so you can see it as a whole of government, a holistic approach. And so we've done that. We've talked a lot more about some of the grants, particularly at DPH and at the school department. So I think there are some things each year that we try to focus on and improve, and when we do that, we lay a foundation for being able to then look at it more consistently year over year. So I appreciate that, and we, with our limited time, try to build those in, and we'll take this back and have that conversation for the next time.
Councilor Demoto.
Thank you very much. That was a very thorough presentation, and thank you to everybody who served on that committee. The one question I have is, when it comes to the school budget, you talked about adding 2 special needs teachers and 1 additional teacher. Did you take into account the 5 teachers who left the school system at the end of this year?
I believe, and I'll have to defer to Superintendent Howard, but I just to be clear, I think there was 1 special needs teacher and 2 ABA instructors for a total of 3 that were hired. And I do believe that I don't know if all 5 of the layoffs were brought back, but I don't think that certainly the ones for the 1st and 2nd grade were not. So I don't know if that gets you to the full 5 or if those are just the I thought it was 3. So that's why I'm not sure what that
I
is.
think I'm talking about the retirees.
Yeah.
So in the retirees, obviously those jobs are going to be posted, a couple of them are specialists, so it's a different mechanism, but there will not be any reduction in staffing and that was the promise made in the override, and that's what the school intends.
Thank you, Council President.
Councilor DeRosa and Councilor Costa.
Thank you, Council President. Just a couple of quick comments, and then one question for you, Matt. I'll echo what was said earlier by others. Those of us that serve on the Finance Commission give every Thursday night for 2 months to go through this process. Karen Chavez, fantastic job coordinating us as a commission, but also coordinating all of the visits from the town departments as you do every year, so thank you very much. It's not always an easy task. And I appreciate, Shannon being here and everybody else that was involved in the commission, a lot of hard work and great perspectives and ideas that we contributed to the process. And it's a good commission that comes from different backgrounds professionally, so we're able to contribute that. So Matt, thank you again for a great job. I think the one comment I wanna make to just kind of underscore what you were saying at the end in terms of recommendations, and it speaks to the comment that Councilor Swope made a minute ago. The recommendation that we're putting forth to create a tech committee and look at IT overall across both the town and the school. My understanding is, and having worked as a college administrator as well, that most often that is the case, that, and especially with large organizations and municipalities, they are creating common data warehouses that really enable the kind of data-driven decisions and analytics that so I would just highly support that recommendation that we start with the creation of a tech committee that can kind of look at where we are today and what we really experienced as the town departments came before us was when you look at things like digitizing their services and automating their services for the purpose of making it easier for people in the town to interact with those services. There's a wide variance between the departments in terms of where they are along that journey. So I think if we can really look at how that can be accelerated, would be great. How we can drive analytically driven decisions would be great. So I just underscore that recommendation. And then I think, Matt, maybe if there's one question I have that maybe you can just kind of take a step back and review again, because the council president mentioned this. The solid waste fund, the recommendation here is to increase the trash fee from $160, which it is currently, to $190. Can you just again explain what structural gap we're trying to solve with that increase?
Sure. You know, from our review of the solid waste fund, enterprise fund, there were two issues going into FY '25 or going into FY '26 and '25. I think there's generally been at least some discussion about reducing the reliance of our on the town budget, the pressure on the town budget, and shifting that to the solid waste fund, and that's accomplished by taking the contribution that we take from our general fund from 600,000 down to 400,000. So that's continuing a path that we've gone in the last couple of years, which is slowly trying to reduce the reliance on the general fund. The other thing that happened last year is that we used $200,000 of retained earnings. Retained earnings are essentially reversions from prior years. It's a balance in the fund. So we used a balance in the fund to help support and balance the fund for fiscal year '25. That starts to get into compliance issue with Department of Revenue as it relates to the operation of enterprise funds. So it's not a good practice, and it's one that creates, again, a structural deficit going forward and masks sort of what's really happening with respect to the user fees, which are really why enterprise funds are created. So this does a couple things that again, it reduces the general fund reliance, but it also reduces the reliance on the retained earnings. And then by increasing the trash fee from 160 to 190 does create a reoccurring permanent revenue source to then address what is then the gap that's made up from that. So it puts the fund on a more structural footing going forward. And now that we have a new contract, we're in a position to understand what those costs are going to be going forward, and to have a better view over multiple years of what might be needed from the residents in order to support the intent of the solid waste fund.
Understood.
I will say, in all fairness, the amount of general fund contribution is an open question. I think as we've had as a goal a desire to reduce that, but to what extent, I think is a question for all of you to debate.
Councilor Costa.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that presentation as well. Thank you to the commission, great work, and of course to the finance committee sitting here on the council. But I did just want to thank the voters of Winthrop as well for making this budget season a little easier on the council and everyone who worked on this. I'm sure you were probably biting your nails as you were hoping that override money was coming in. So again, recognize the voters of Winthrop for once again standing up, voting in the right manner as it relates to the betterment of this town. So I just wanted to tip the hat to them. Thank you.
Councilor Ayala.
Two items. The first up again with thank you to all of you who helped put this together. Matt, not for today, but perhaps for the next session. I'm glad you recommended once again the need for us to focus on technology, business enterprise software, et cetera, and a common platform throughout the government. Be interested to get your detailed thoughts about the trade-offs between going right into a CIO funding that position and finding someone good versus going through a committee. One of the things I worry about, we've been talking about this since probably before I got to the council, but certainly over the last 3.5 years, and we haven't progressed on it. So I'd like to have that conversation perhaps at a later date. The second thing is just an acknowledgement in a parallel setting, and recently departed Councilor John Munson and Hannah Belcher and Councilor DeRoss in particular, working with Tony Marino. The capital program is night and day difference from 3.5 years ago. It is in with Steve Caller's critical technical help on it as well. We're in a much better place, so I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Tony has led with a subset of the councils to get that in shape as well.
Well, thank you for that, and for those questions or comments. I think a couple of things on the IT. I agree. This has been something at least the Finance Commission has talked about for the last couple of years. And again, I think what's really telling to us is every time we meet with each department, we see an investment. We see an investment in IT that's been there for a number of years. We see increases to licensing and to contracting, and we see the need to keep up with new applications, creating some additional pressure. Again, you look at salaries, you look at health insurance. Those are going up year over year based on contracts, but the only other expense where you really see some movement is around IT. And so there is an investment already being made, number one. So it's important to, I think, leverage that investment and make sure that we're doing it as wisely as we can. I agree that maybe jumping into a CIO position may be too quick, particularly where we've had trouble getting some traction around this. One of the things we do recommend in the recommendations is there's a couple of different approaches. The committee might be a good way to begin to lay out some goals and some strategic vision. Whether or not we can jump into a CIO position, that would be great, but it may be too much. We could also think about a regional approach. You know, the systems that we use as a town are not unlike systems that other towns all around us use, DPW, whether it be health or DPW or the schools. You know, there may be an opportunity to leverage not just the systems themselves in terms of contracting them and working to get better purchasing from licensing agreements or contract agreements through regionalization, but also to leverage expertise. If we had to share a CIO or an IT specialist from another town, just to help get some traction, I think that could be a viable option. So we tried not to make this so prescriptive that it would collapse under its own weight, but to try to offer some ideas to get some traction. With respect to the capital budget, I will say the memos and the recommendations really didn't go into a lot of detail around the capital budget, in part because I think the town manager's presentation went into a lot more detail on that in the spring forum, and we focused mostly on the operating budget.
Anything else? Again, we can't thank you enough, Matt, for all your work and the commission as a whole. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So we have several public hearings that we have to go through. Start from the bottom on this one. I'll open up a public hearing for the fiscal 26 budget. If anyone, public hearing is now open. If there's anyone here that wants to speak on the fiscal 26 budget, now's the opportunity. I know we just spent the better part of an hour doing that, and we will continue to do that later in this meeting and next week.
Hi, Shannon Poulos, Precinct 3. I just wanted to underscore one of the things that Matt had said as it relates to the IT. I think that one of the things that we wrangled with during our conversations was, again, when you want to make good decisions, you need good data, and that's only as good as the technology that you have and the data that you have. And I think that given that, you know, roughly 80 to 85% of our total budget comprises salaries and insurance, we really need to arm the people that are sitting at contract negotiations, whether it be teachers unions or fire or police or whatever it is, with the data to be able to really benchmark against other communities. So we talk a lot about the insurance contribution, and on the face of it, it might sound high, 85-15, other communities 75-25. But unless you are able to put that into a total package of, well, maybe we're lower on salaries, and so therefore maybe that offsets each other. And so without the ability to do that, what I fear the most is that we're not arming the people that are sitting behind those contract negotiations with the information to be able to, you know, negotiate in good faith and be armed with the data to really support and perhaps rebut, maybe not, a notion that, oh, we're paying salaries X amount less than other communities. Maybe, but I actually am not sure we really actually have the data to support that. Because I think that, you know, even in my professional life, you know, when I talk about compensation, you have to look at the full picture. You have to look at the salary, bonuses, health insurance. And so I know we've done compensation studies in the past, but it typically relates to non-union personnel. And so whatever we can do to really enhance the technology, to be able to have the data, to be able to really arm the people sitting at those negotiation tables with the ability to, again, whether it's to rebut or to acknowledge it. I'm actually not taking a stance one way or the other because I don't know the answer, but we have to have the good data to be able to do that. I think that the other point that I would just again underscore is that, again, the school is 60% of our operating budget, and so we have to have that budget document adhere to the same types of standards that Tony has so successfully implemented in the town as it relates to the town budget. I think when I first started on the Finance Commission, one of the things I heard was, well, that's the town. That's the school. That's not really our purview. That's under the school committee. it's 60% of what you're voting on as a town council. You absolutely have to know every detail of the school budget. It's 60%, right? So if you don't have that same level of transparency, there's no possible way that again, you could be able to vote on a budget without that level of transparency. So again, it does come back to a little bit of that, and Matt has appropriately underscored and acknowledged that I think we're probably underinvested a bit in terms of the whether it's technology or resource power on the school side for us to be able to really be able to get that level of transparency and get that level of the same consistent transparency across the board. And again, there's just no way for the vast majority of our budget, which is salary and expenses, which is mostly union, how anyone could go into a negotiation at what I've been able to gather, with the ability to negotiate in a really educated way. So I just can't stress enough, I think, that recommendation, because it's just such an incredibly important enabler of the ability to go to those negotiation tables every 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just wanted to make a
Yes.
statement. As a teacher,
Just name and precinct.
my name is Jennifer Jones, precinct 1. As a teacher, I know that Winthrop gets paid a lot less than other districts, because when I did move here, I am a teacher. And I was looking to become a teacher here where I live, right? Wouldn't happen, because the pay here is a lot less than anywhere else. And the idea that they're already on GIC says a lot about their healthcare, because I know a lot of other places, yeah, they do change to GIC, but a lot of other places that are surrounding here are not. They're still on Blue Cross Blue Shield. So for them to have a pay cut, I mean, to have an increase in their insurance and still be at the level they're at, I think is unfair to even talk about.
Anyone else? Okay, Councilor Tessner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think one thing that I wanted to reiterate from the chairman's presentation, it was in the comments, but I just wanted to make sure that we hear it again. Even with the school override, the funding of the school budget is a level service funding, right? So we're not adding or bringing back any services or extracurriculars or language or music or additional AP classes that we don't already offer. We're not adding anything new, even with the override. So in the mid to long term, what we're gonna be facing with our school system is we're gonna fall behind competition. We just got a pretty good rating, somewhere, we ranked like 28 out of the top 30 high schools in the state, which is, I think that's really good. But if we wanna stay there, or if we wanna climb that ranking, we're gonna have to do some more investment in that school system. But that's just what I'm hearing from the budget meetings, what I'm seeing from the superintendent, and we wanna really invest in the town in the mid and the long term. That's an important piece.
Anyone else? And we'll have more discussion internally on the council on the budget later in the meeting. So we will close the budget hearing. We will go to town council appropriate. We will open a new public hearing. Town council appropriate $1.465356 million in free cash to stabilization funds. Councilor Duras.
Yes, we had a finance subcommittee meeting prior to this meeting tonight, and we discussed that as well as all of the other motions that we will talk about next. And we actually made positive recommendations on each.
Okay, so we've opened a public hearing. If anybody has any opposition or proponents of the $1.465356 million in free cash to various stabilization funds, anyone have any comments on that? Seeing none, we will close that public hearing. Open a new public hearing that the town council appropriate $200,000 from retained earnings in water sewer to go to the water sewer capitalization stabilization fund. That public hearing is open. Councilor Duras.
Similarly, motion from the town manager for the 200,000, we met and have a positive recommendation.
Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, we will close that public hearing. We will open a new public hearing. The town council appropriate $130,000 in free cash for compensated absences in the OPEB trust. Councilor Duras.
Yep, discussed during a subcommittee meeting, and when the time comes in old business, I'll read each one of these motions, but yes, a positive recommendation from finance subcommittee.
Any discussion on this? And again, just for clarification, there's a motion to appropriate $130,000, $80,000 of that would go into compensated absences fund, and $50,000 would go into the OPEB trust. We will talk more about this in old business. Seeing no further discussion, we will close that public hearing. We will open up one more public hearing. The town council appropriate the sum of $38,500,000 for the demolition of the old middle school and auditorium and design of a new firehouse, furniture, fixture, and equipment, and completely build. Councilor Duras.
As council president, we were saying during the finance subcommittee that this one probably of all the motions needs the least discussion, because hopefully everybody is familiar with exactly what this does, but I will read the motion in its entirety when we are in old business. We did have a positive recommendation.
And again, this is authorizing the town to appropriate the sum of $38,500,000, not to exceed. Basically, we can absolutely appropriate less money and bond less money if so warranted, and hopefully that's the direction we're heading. Any discussion on this?
Nope.
We will close that public hearing.
Mr. Council President,
Yes.
I know it wasn't listed up above, but it is listed down below in old business. There was another motion for the 20,000 of retained earnings for the ferry enterprise fund costs.
No, we need a public.
We didn't need public,
No.
that's fine, I just wanted to point out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. We will open up for the first round of public comment. Zoom? Yes.
Should I go before Zoom?
No, yes.
So
Again, name and precinct.
I can, precinct 2. I wanted to come and, briefly urge the council president to put forward a vote for the appointment of Councilor Munson's seat, former seat, in precinct 2. I think we all know and have this feeling after the override and the debt exclusion that we need to be more proactive rather than reactive to issues in the town. And I think that work starts now. I think it is sort of incumbent that we get this going with a full council and give precinct 2 full representation. The vibe I get, the overwhelming sense from the words that people in my precinct are telling me is there's a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainty. And I think that is alleviated by communication. I think we need somebody who is in the precinct 2 seat communicating with the people in precinct 2 about what the direction is. If we are sacrificing, or if, taxes are going up for this reason, that reason, whatever we are doing, they need to be aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I would like very much to do that work. So I have put my name into the ring there, and I know there are other names, and that would be sufficient to have a vote. I think the people of precinct 2 deserve it, and there's a lot to do. Precinct 2 deserves a vote on the budget. Precinct 2 deserves a vote on the capital plan. I know that there are some major issues in precinct 2 that have only recently entered into the capital plan, and I know that precinct 2 needs the kind of representation that's going to ensure, they continue to be represented in the capital plans going forward. So again, I urge the council president to put that vote forward, and I look forward to talking more about it.
Any other public comment? Karen?
Karen Chavez, precinct 2. My own personal thanks to Larissa Wojcik, who was instrumental in helping me schedule the department heads to meet with the Finance Commission. And also, of course, to Denise Quist, who sat with me and we found empty dates that we could use the Harvey so that we would be able to have Zoom. Thank you. Thank you for posting all my agendas and listening to all my rules. And again, to Robbie Powers and to Sarah Johnson, who attended all of our meetings and were there to answer our questions on the spot. It really helped immensely.
Thank you. Any other public comment on Zoom?
Okay. Silly?
Hey Denise, thank you. Silly Malleus, Precinct 1. I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Phil Ronan for a fantastic job at the Memorial Day event this past Monday. It was a beautiful day. The speakers were fantastic. It was well thought out and well planned and well attended. So great job by Mr. Ronan, and he really does work hard. I mean, he's out there. He's doing a lot of work with the veterans and such. So a great job to Mr. Ronan, and also DPW did a great job beautifying the area. They threw a lot of mulch down before, so shout out to the DPW crew. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Carol Meach?
Council President and Denise for allowing me to speak. I have two things. One is a point of clarification on one of the budget items. You're mentioned increasing the trash fees from 160 to 190. And I looked through the budget, but I can't find how many receptacles we have in the town and what the revenue increase of that specific is, and I didn't hear it, so I apologize if I missed it. The second question, or the second statement I want to make is regarding Precinct 2. Karen Chavez, I think, is also put her name in the hat for a vote, and I can't express enough how much of an asset she is to the town. I have been on the ordinance committee this year, and it's the first time that I've been on a committee, and her mentorship and teaching has been outstanding, and her institutional knowledge from the 30 years that she has spent learning and working for the town has been incredible across, I think, every department. She's trusted, and there's so many decisions to be made with the firehouse coming, the finances that we're up against, and just the dedication that she has to the town. I strongly recommend that the council vote in favor of her in Precinct 2. And Karen, I'd like to thank you so much for all the work that you do every day. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kath. Anyone else?
Diana Beans?
Diana?
Hi, Diana Vienne, Precinct 2. I think I'll echo Carol's comments here. Filling this vacancy is a no-brainer. Karen Chavez has dedicated decades of service to this town. No one, I think literally no one is more trusted and respected in terms of our community. There's probably not a person in this room or in Winthrop on the whole who doubts Karen's integrity or intelligence, dependability, deep knowledge of our town, her long-standing commitment, honesty, her institutional knowledge just make her an invaluable asset to Winthrop, and I'm just thrilled that she's willing to take this on. So thank you for that, Karen. In terms of Mr. Kinlan's statements that Precinct 2 is confused, I beg to differ. As a member of Precinct 2, I think we're quite focused. I will say that unfortunately our Karen's opponent tonight has no record of community service. Others have given their time to uplift this town, and this person spends lots of time attacking and belittling people on Facebook and calling us feeble-minded. That was one thing that happened. A lot about victimhood, division, but I do wanna also make a great note about this coming Thursday. There's a lot of stuff going in town, tons of events, and I love the new calendar from the chamber. I'm seeing great events for the kids and at the parks and family nights, and I love the pickleball adult tournament, which we're actually thinking of joining. But I do want to invite the entire community to join us in front of the E.B. Newton School for our No on 3A standout. As always, we'll make sure we are full of spirit and unity and purpose. I think over the past 2 years, we've made incredible progress as a community. We've become more informed and more connected and are more committed than ever to keeping 3A's unfunded one-size-fits-all mandate out of Winthrop. So now that we have 2 active exemption cases in motion, we're just really laser focused.
Thank you, Diane. Any other comments? Is that 3 minutes? Yes, it's 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Yes, sir.
Erin Barcelos, precinct 5. I don't know this young man that put his name in that, but I do remember my very first town council meeting I came to at the beginning of May. And it was at the senior center. And I want to believe that he was there and he actually made a public comment asking the questions about who's gonna, what's the process to fill the seat that's empty. He was very adamant about wanting to know what's gonna happen for his precinct. So I just wanna call him out for that. I remember that was my very first meeting. So also, just to reference the Thursday standout that was just mentioned, after that, where it's in front of, there's a great housing informative thing going on inside of the EB Center, whatever it's called. So if anyone is going to that standout, please come and join us inside of there after. Everybody is welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Correspondence, Denise.
I received none.
Committee reports. Vice President Bell. Rules North.
Thank you. Rules and Ordinance met this Monday to finish up going over the town council rules and procedures. We got through all 12 rules and the recommendations will be coming to the council. We also had a conversation about the special committees that are laid out in the council rules and procedures, so that'll be something else that the committee will tackle after the initial edits to the rules.
Great. Finance Committee, Councilor Duras.
Yep, as I said earlier, thank you, Council President. Finance Subcommittee met earlier this evening and we reviewed and had a positive recommendation for all the motions you're about to hear in old business. And in addition to those coming from the town manager, Councilor Tassinari has also submitted a motion as well that he will be discussing during that session.
Now.
Thank you very much. Firehouse Building Committee will be meeting a week from tomorrow, next Wednesday evening, June 11th at 6:30 in the Harvey hearing room. The Firehouse Building Committee has picked an OPM through the town manager. That OPM will be P3 out of Norwell. They gave a very, very good interview. It was a unanimous vote from the Firehouse Building Committee and town manager was very impressed as well. They will be meeting with us. They will be here next Wednesday evening. They will be talking about a timeline. They'll be talking about financial items. They'll be talking about quickly moving forward the day after they were selected. And we had them committed to the project. They wrote an RFQ for an architect, which is in the central registry as of today. It will be in there for 21 days, 3 weeks. So we hope to be able to sit here and talk about an architect sometime right after 4th of July. And again, the next process will be going through abatement. We will have somebody down to take a look at it. We'll be taking bids for an abatement in terms of asbestos, any other hazardous materials that needs to be taken out. And then again, the plan will continue to be demolition by late fall. So a lot to come on that. I encourage you to join us. Firehouse Building Committee meeting, June 11th at 6:30. School department report. School had graduation last Friday night. It's a little different, it seems like it always has been the first Friday in June, and now it was the last Friday in May. But the weather held out. The event was as well attended as I've ever seen a graduation. The students were remarkable, the speeches were great. It's a really special class, and I was proud to be there. Along with my wife, who after 40 years will be retiring, so it's kind of bittersweet. But it was a great job. Matt Crombie did a fantastic job. Lisa, as always, was right on point and did a great job. So I thank all the teachers from the high school, Principal Matt Crombie, Assistant Principal Capasso, and all the staff. And of course, Lisa, but most of all, I just want to thank the graduates and their families. It's amazing. I mean, everybody has kids, right? And you have a kid, a little baby crawling around, then you say, oh, you always tell them it's gonna go by so fast, and they always give you the eye like, no, it isn't. And then, you know, soon enough, they're graduating high school and getting on to their next step, whatever that may be. But it's just they do a great job down there at the facility at Millfield. And again, congratulations to all the graduates, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot of great things from them in the future. So that is the school department report. We do not have an update on policy committee meetings right now. Town manager's report has been distributed. Tony, if you want to add anything?
No, to say had a brief meeting with council president today with former P3 as well, you know, about what KBA already did. And the June 25th is the date that the RFQs will be due in. We anticipate, you know, similar response to what we got for the OPMs, probably at least 8 or so, I would hope. And then we'll get working on that. So other than that, I certainly have no questions.
No questions on the report, Tony, but I'm gonna right or wrong because I neglected to thank you and Sarah and Robbie during the budget discussions. As Karen said, you guys were there every step of the way with us. It's much appreciated, especially for me. That's only my second go around with the budget season, so I was appreciating Sarah and Robbie entertaining every stupid question I had for them. There were several, but they're wonderful resources. You all are. Great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Belcher.
Thank you, Town Manager Marina. I just wanna thank you for holding a community meeting down at the PSA last week regarding your beach management plan. I will be having a community meeting this Thursday here and on Zoom. So preemptive thanks for taking my feedback that I get some thank you.
And Councilor DeMarco.
I just wanted to acknowledge that it's Pride Month, so to everybody that celebrates, enjoy.
Councilor Ayala.
So thank you for being transparent about the 2 public trees that have been cut down and your efforts to make sure. I think it's important for the public to understand these are not just town rules, this is a statewide law. And so you're violating 2 sets of laws here for people out there. But thank you for staying on top of this and coming to the appropriate resolution.
And you have a question?
Just just a comment. I met with Tony today in reference to your comment about the trees and with town council president. And I do feel that you all ought to know that this is really serious. I mean, someone has violated property of our town. It's a tree that has it's huge. And so I know that we're on it and we're going to follow through on it. But there will be some consequences to this. And for all of you who know anything about trees and love them, please take care of them. This won't happen, shouldn't happen again.
And just a quick note on something that's in your town manager report, that you had submitted a request to the MWRA.
I heard back
And
actually
we did
today.
get back today, which I will just read in here
Yeah.
now. Dear Ms. Marino, we would be happy, and this is in response to the incident with the MWRA. We would be happy to send you a post-incident report, including all that you have asked for below. Stay tuned, I will send this to you within the next day or so. Again, the MWRA is sorry this incident took place, and we are taking every step we can to prevent such an incident in the future. The contractor was put on notice and they have fixed their issue. That repair should help eliminate a reoccurrence. MWRA prides itself on being a good neighbor, and odor control and prompt communication is an important effort we make to minimize impacts on our town. Please encourage your residents to contact us should they notice any odors immediately when they occur. Timely reporting is key. Unfortunately, our response was delayed by over 24 hours because we didn't see the complaints until one of our staff saw it on social media that following business day. MWRA maintains an odor hotline for promptly reporting of any issues, including odors. A copy of our odor brochure is attached with all appropriate contact numbers and emails. I will send you the incident report shortly. Sincerely, David Quest. And I will ask for a copy of that report to be up on the town's website. And again, the hotline for people out there now, Deer Island Hotline, 617-660-7633. And thank you, Tony, for taking care of that. Councilor Costa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Town Manager, just a quick question regarding the TIPS program. Do you anticipate any problems as we experienced with regards to after tearing up the street, not being paved and having the the various complaints by the public? Do you anticipate that type of experience when this roadway is torn up after the June 12th date?
Once we get by Shirley Street, I don't anticipate, but I think the next section up to Shirley Street's gonna cause similar disruption and pain. I mean, we have to, like, same issues exist, right? Shallow utilities, we still gotta rebuild the road, all the different tie-ins, materials gotta be, old bad materials gotta be taken out, we gotta put in better, hard pack material to rebuild the road. So yeah, it'll be, till we get to Shirley Street, it'll be bad, but once we get by there, I think less, business on the impact. Impact on the businesses and, a little easier to navigate, but it's not gonna be all the sections we do when we have to get to binder aren't gonna be pleasant, but we're gonna keep the contractor pushing and do what we can to minimize the efforts, water trucks, keep the dust down, things like that.
Yeah, I'd just like to recommend that, maybe staying on top of that, maybe having a more thorough schedule with the contractor to make sure that,
Well, as we do, they wanted to wait till school got out now, so they're gonna start back on that process as soon as school gets out.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilor Draw.
I know that, Council President, you'll mention this at the end of the meeting, but to dovetail on Councilor DeMarco's acknowledgement of Pride, for those of you who may not have attended the Pride potluck in the past, it is this Saturday from 2 to 5 at Ingleside Park. If you have not tasted burgers or hot dogs made by our town manager, who graciously staffs that grill at the Pride potluck.
And the police department.
And the police department, yes, I highly encourage you to come check it out. Multi-talented.
Tony, town manager, is there some kind of safety precaution that the MWRA goes through before those trucks leave the facility? In other words, I was told, I think by someone, that there is a time when they go around that facility to make sure that there are no leaks in the trucks, and I believe there's a truck that follows.
It's a trailer vehicle, yeah. This happened to be a weld that, you'll see it in the report, but what I was told was there was a small weld that let go in the truck in the front that caused that order to, go out, and they've since fixed it, put it back in, but it'll all be in the report. We asked all those specific questions when we asked for the report.
Okay, because if they did some kind of go around, just one time go around, they would have caught it before it got out. Thank you very much.
Great. Councilor Testa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a point of order before we get into old business. We do have a counselor who's in violation of the abandonment clause here tonight. Councilor DeMarco has missed 3 out of the last 6 regular meetings as of passing tonight's minutes. It's all recorded in the minutes going back to March, April, and May, 1 each month. That's 50% of the meetings. I expected to hear something from the president, seeing as it's president's responsibility to uphold the charter, but seeing as we're getting to old business, and we're gonna start voting on things, I need to bring that up as a point of order and ask for the council president's opinion ruling.
I think you're absolutely right, it is the council president's purview to take care of that and manage that, and I believe if you look back, Council DeMarco was on Zoom at one of those meetings.
Not according to the minutes we passed tonight, Mr. President.
Okay, so we have to look at it again and ask the town clerk to look at the WCAT, which we've done most recently as I've been on this topic. I've talked about it 3 times over the last several months, so it is not something that I am letting slip. And we will go through WCAT and notice that there was an attendance from Zoom. And shame on
I was
whoever
at that
thought,
meeting.
If you saw that when we voted on the minutes, you should have brought it up for discussion and to amend the minutes. If
No,
you
the minutes are
realize that.
correct. He was absent. He didn't vote in roll call, he didn't vote in any of the votes that we took on 520. I'm assuming that's the meeting you're talking
The
about when
town
it comes to
clerk
Zoom.
informed me that he was on the Zoom meeting, so I'm going by.
In the town clerk's own minutes, he's absent.
Okay.
Did he slot me in?
It was a communication, we can look over the communication error and see what it is that he did
And
not.
if we made a mistake, we will make an amendment to the minutes at the next meeting. Just because we vote on minutes, if the minutes are wrong,
I think that we
doesn't-
voted to uphold the attendance policy.
I am 100% in
on
favor of that,
12/17.
and I wish we did that for subcommittees as well. Because there's many a time where we don't have proper attendance at subcommittees, or we don't have subcommittees in a timely manner at all. So we could discuss all those points, but if there was a mistake in the minutes, and I understand you do not think there was a mistake, therefore you did not bring it up, we will take a look at the minutes and we will adjust the minutes. Just by voting on the minutes doesn't make it proper until if it's wrong.
If you thought there was a mistake, you could have also brought it up. The minutes are the minutes. I mean, that's what we all, that's how we ratify the
It has
budget
nothing
too.
to do with the town manager's report and you're out of order.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Moving on,
Mr. President,
moving on,
Mr. President,
moving on,
Mr.
Councilor
President.
Young.
Mr.
Old
President.
business, MBTA 3A, is there any discussion on 3A, just to let the town be informed as to what we will be doing over the next couple of weeks? We will be having a special meeting next week with the planning board. In that meeting, we will be discussing 3A. Shortly after that meeting, hopefully within a day, we will the planning board will vote on their recommendation to send to the council. And at our next regularly scheduled meeting on June 17th, the council will be voting on 3A. Does anyone wish to discuss their views as of now on 3A? Councilor Swope.
At the risk of making everybody else upset, I guess, today. I have not changed my opinion on 3A. I'm still a no. And I know, and I've talked to people that are yes, and I know that people feel very strongly about this whole issue. I have several reasons for feeling that way, thinking that way. I don't really like losing control of all of our zoning, and I understand it's in one district now, but that doesn't mean that can't change. It's changed several times. I mean, the Commonwealth has changed the rules several times. Indeed, as the punishments have changed, the grants used to be for which we really didn't receive much funding, or if any, from those grants, or they're minimal. And now they increase it. But this bullying technique, I find it really, really difficult. In addition to that, we already are planning to build homes here. We have we spend a lot of time on this, and we're not perfect about it. Many times I just don't see the harm when an ordinance committee agrees to make an exception. I frankly don't see the harm. It's supposed to be there when a change is made or an ordinance is reviewed and it's overturned. So it's not that I think that only 3A is a culprit here. I would hope that we take seriously the way we organize this town. I would love to see an architectural plan for the town, so that as we build out, we know where we're going with all of this. And I would love to see that we, you know, as we meet the ADU issue, that we understand it better, and that we know what we're doing here. We don't give a lot of exceptions to it. So those are, but building a lot more homes here, I don't know, I find that a density issue is certainly a question. We have two lawsuits on the books. One is for the fact that we are so dense that we don't need a Commonwealth deciding that we're going to build more and more homes here. So one is a density issue. And one is that it's a unfunded mandate issue. So those are two lawsuits that are moving forward. And I would hope that we would be exempt from this law. That would be the best outcome ever for us, I believe. In terms of safety and infrastructure, it's funny, I'm standing on the bridge, I'm looking at all the cars, I'm thinking, where are they going? Where are they coming? But I just know that there's a lot of cars at night, there's a lot of cars in the morning, and it's really hard to get out of town. If there were a big problem in this town, I venture to say, I don't think many of us would be leaving. It better be a motion to stay in place, because I don't know how we would get out. I have a lot more comments about this, but I'll leave it at that. You're welcome to talk to me anytime about this. I know some of you are very passionate about it going forward. I am not, and that's where I stand.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor DiMarco?
Honestly, I don't know why we're still talking about 3A, we already voted no. That's all.
Councilor Costigan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Fully support Councilor Swope. As it relates to 3A, I am a no on that as well. To Councilor Aiello's point some months ago, as he talked about 500 to 900 units being built in town, I see that as currently being well accelerated to look at some of the projects and hearing about some as well. So the 600 to 900, 500 to 900, on top of the ADUs, I think is a push for Winthrop to begin with. I'm for the full exemption as well, always have been. I don't see what the problem is with the exemption from the state. We're a unique town, how many times do I have to say that? But we're nearing a breaking point in this town as it relates to comfort. And you know, as Mr. Perrin noted in one of his op-ed pieces, that people have escaped and left the inner city to come to Winthrop for a little breathing room. And if we wanna give that up as it relates to bringing 3A into this town, then we just become another East Boston as far as I'm concerned. So those are just my opinions, but I think we have to be very concerned about the building that's about to take place in this town by our local builders, who are all reputable for the most part. And at the same time, I think in the future we should probably put a system in place to monitor the building in this town and maybe just oversee that a little more closely as it relates to progression, you know, through the different departments in town as well. So again, get a little control on that, but again, with 3A, if it ever comes into town, I think it's lights out, we're done.
Councilor.
Just a point of clarification, I don't wanna talk about 3A generally, but I wanna just clarify for people listening that what Councilor Costigan is referring to are a potential number of units that have nothing to do with 3A. They predate 3A. They were done by previous councils who have changed the zoning. I don't think I've ever used the term 900 because I don't think it adds up to 900. I think it's potentially 750, of which about 200 have already been built. But it is a lot of units coming at us.
It is.
But it has nothing to do with 3A, just wanna make sure everybody has that.
I'm in full agreement.
We can talk about what 3A does later, but let's not conflate the two issues. Thank you.
I would just say, I've been pretty clear on this since January of 2024, it's not good for Winthrop, and I will be a no on that. Short-term rentals, Vice President Belcher, we're gonna.
So in adapting the short-term rental policy to include the planning board's recommendations, there were a couple things I wanted to run by inspectional services to make sure we're not overloading their operation before we send that out, but I should be able to get that taken care of this week.
Awesome, thank you.
Can I ask, Vice President Belcher, do we have, in this proposal, do we have any fines for people that have not registered?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay.
Yep, it's a really, I know we haven't talked about it at length for a while, but it is a really robust policy that includes fines and escalations of fines. It provides a lot of protection for the neighborhoods that would host the Airbnbs. It provides a lot of clarity for the operators of the Airbnbs. I will get that out. The version that went out to the council before it went to the planning board is pretty close to what it is now. But again, I just wanna make sure that we're not overwhelming inspectional services because it does move a lot of the logistical work to them as far as inspections and granting permits and things like that.
Another 25 maybe. Thank you.
Council Dross, free cash policy.
Thank you, Council President. We actually have two pieces to cover in free cash. First, I'd like to read the motion from Town Manager Marino regarding this current allocation of free cash. And then if it pleases the Council President, I'd like to ask you to recognize Councilor Tessanari, who has a motion to offer regarding future free cash allocation policy starting July 1st. So let's start here. The motion from Town Manager Marino, I move that the Town Council vote to appropriate certified free cash as listed below or take any other action thereto. Free cash and retained earnings certification file is attached. And I'll read these amounts quickly. Certified free cash as of July 1st, 2024 was $2,081,694. What the town manager is motioning is that we add a set aside in the amount of $250,000. That would leave available to allocate $1,831,694. The motion asks that 4 distributions to stabilization funds take place. The first one is the general stabilization fund. The current balance is $4,400,743. The motion asks that we allocate $677,727 from free cash, which would result in the general stabilization ending balance of $5,078,470. The next is capital stabilization fund. The current balance is $1,743,449. The request is to allocate from free cash $668,214, which would result in an ending balance of capital stabilization of $2,411,663. Next is the building maintenance stabilization fund. The current balance is $235,536. The requested free cash allocation is $64,464. And that would be an ending balance of $300,000, which is the cap on that stabilization fund per the current free cash policy. The second new piece that the town manager is requesting in addition to the set aside of $250,000 is the creation of an education stabilization fund. That free cash allocation would be in the amount of $54,951. All of that would result in ending free cash remaining balance of $616,338, and this came out of subcommittee with a positive recommendation.
All right, coming out of committee with a positive recommendation does not require a second. Is there discussion on this? Councilor Tessin.
We wanted to make sure that this was appropriated as is, as recommended by the town manager. And then we would deal with the forward-looking policy starting in July 1. I think that the town manager put a lot of thought into this recommendation. We don't wanna hold it up any longer in committee, and we'd like to get this passed.
Any other discussion on this? So just a couple of things, just to, you know, I had sent this to committee a couple of months ago, hoping that we would have a policy in place for this. I think it's really good that we're doing something that the town manager has asked, including adding 3% towards an education stabilization account. And if just anybody's out there doing math and saying the numbers don't match, the 10% for building, once building stabilization meets its max, which we set at 300,000, the remainder of that 10% goes into the capital stabilization. So right now in this allotment, it's 37% going to general stabilization, it's 30% going to capital and 10% going to building. There was only less than 5% that actually went into building, the remaining 6% went into capital, which is why capital looks like it's 36%. And then added 3% for education stabilization account. So we will be voting on a recommendation, I think Councilor Tassinari is gonna bring forward on a free cash policy, but that won't go into effect until July 1st and will affect future free cash distributions. Other than that, is there any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Council Aiello.
Yes.
Council DeMarco.
Yes.
Council Costigan.
Yes.
Council Tassinari.
Yes.
Council Swope.
Yes.
Council DeRoss.
Yes.
Vice President Belcher.
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes. Motion passed. Councilor DeRoss.
Council President, I'd like to ask your acknowledgement of Councilor Tassinari. Before he starts to read his motion, just to summarize for everyone. You heard the two new created pieces in the motion we just passed, a set aside, as well as the creation of an education stabilization fund. What Councilor Tassinari is about to discuss that we have a positive recommendation coming out of committee is a motion for percentage allocations for free cash moving forward starting July 1st.
All right, Councilor Tassinari.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Councilor DeRoss. This is an update to the free cash policy. I move that the town council vote to adopt the following update to the town's free cash allocation policy to read as listed below and become effective July 1st, 2025. Following Division of Local Services certification of free cash, the town council will appropriate according to the following percentages. First 10% shall be set aside to remain in free cash for the following fiscal year, should the council choose not to allocate the free cash in the current fiscal year. Of the remaining 90%, the General Stabilization Fund shall receive an appropriation of 30%. The capital of that 90%, 30% of the 90%. Capital Stabilization Fund shall receive an appropriation of 37%. Building Stabilization Fund shall receive an appropriation of 10% up to the $300,000 fund cap. Any residual amount from this allocation shall be an additional appropriation to the Capital Stabilization Fund. School Stabilization Fund shall receive an appropriation of 3%, and the remaining 20% shall remain in free cash to be appropriated at the discretion of the council.
That motion is coming out of finance with the council's recommendation. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll take a roll call vote.
Council Aiello.
Yes.
Council DeMarco.
Yes.
Council Costigan.
Yes.
Council Tassinari.
Yes.
Council Swope.
Yes.
Council DeRoss.
Yes.
Vice President Belcher.
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, motion passed. Council DeRoss, town council appropriate $200,000 from retained earnings, water sewer capitalization stabilization fund.
Yes, $200,000 from retained earnings into the water sewer capitalization stabilization fund. The retained earnings balance for water sewer is $346,906. The amount requested is $200,000 even. After the motion approval, the retained earnings balance for water sewer would be $146,906. the capital stabilization fund balance for water sewer would be $885,022, and this came out of finance subcommittee with a positive recommendation.
And just for clarification, this is 200,000 coming out of the water sewer fund going to the water stabilization. Came out of committee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Council Aiello,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Costigan,
Yes.
Council Castaneri,
Yes.
Council Swope,
Yes.
Council DeRoss,
Yes.
Vice President Belcher,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes. Motion passed. Town council appropriate $130,000 free cash for compensated absences and OPEB trust. Councilor DeRoss.
Yes, this is a free cash appropriation to reserves. $130,000 is the amount requested by the town manager to be split between two funds. $80,000 to the compensated absence reserve fund and $50,000 to the OPEB trust fund. And for those who may not be familiar, OPEB is retiree health insurance. During the finance subcommittee, Robbie Powers made the comment that this is basically serving as a replenishment for fiscal year 25, for fiscal year 26, following a significant retirement that happened in 2025. And again, came out of the subcommittee with positive recommendation.
Comes out of subcommittee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any discussion on this motion? Alright, roll call please.
Council Aiello,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Costigan,
Yes.
Council Castaneri,
Yes.
Council Swope,
Yes.
Council DeRoss,
Yes.
Vice President Belcher,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, motion passes. Town council appropriate $20,000 from retained earnings of the ferry fund, enterprise fund for the into ferry enterprise fund cost. Councilor DeRoss.
Yes, this is a request by the town manager to allocate from the ferry enterprise fund, the retained earnings fund, $20,000. And so we have ferry retained earnings at $144,838. The requested amount is $20,000. The ferry retained earnings after the motion approval would be $124,838. And this came out of the finance subcommittee with a positive recommendation.
Out of finance sub with a positive recommendation does not require a second. Is there discussion on this? Any thoughts? Just for people who are unaware and don't think we run a ferry, we don't run a ferry, but we still run a pier. And there is still money left in that account. This is not all needed, but there is roughly an insurance bill for the pier of roughly $12,000. Just this will pay that and any other incidental costs that come associated with instead of coming back to the council, it would be there for that purpose. But do not believe we are still not in the ferry business. Roll call please.
Council Aiello,
Happy the T is in the ferry business. Thank you, T. And yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Costigan,
Yes.
Council Castaneri,
Yes.
Council Swope,
Yes.
Council DeRoss,
Yes.
Vice President Belcher,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, motion passed. Town council appropriate the sum of $38,500,000 for the demolition of old middle school and auditorium and so on. Councilor DeRoss.
I'm gonna read this one with a huge smile on my face. Town manager has made a motion that the Winthrop Town Council adopt the following order, and with all the work that went into this, I'm gonna read every word. That the town appropriates the sum of $38,500,000 for the demolition of the old middle school and auditorium and for the design, engineering, constructing, equipping, and furnishing of a new fire station, including the payment of costs incidental or related thereto. And to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to issue bonds or notes under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7, or any other enabling authority. This too came out of subcommittee with a positive.
Came out of committee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Council Aiello,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Costigan,
Yes.
Council Castaneri,
Yes.
Council Swope,
Yes.
Council DeRoss,
100% yes.
Vice President Belcher,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, motion passed. Precinct 2 council update, as I have stated at each of the meetings since Councilor Munson resigned his position, the process hasn't changed. We took applications for letters of interest up until the end of May. This is the first meeting since we have received those letters. We received 2 letters of interest. The next step is we will conduct interviews of those 2 candidates at our next regularly scheduled council meeting on the 17th. If so inclined, the council might be able to vote at that time, if not at the first meeting in July. This process is not unlike any process we've had in the past. Over the past 20 years, we've had several instances like this, and they have been filled in the same exact manner, in the same exact timeframe. So again, there were two letters of interest. Karen Chavez has put in a letter of interest, and Michael Kinlan has put in a letter of interest. We thank them both for giving of their time and sacrifice, and we look forward to hearing from them at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Yes.
I'd like to move the question. It's on old business. I'd like to move the question, have nominations and vote for precinct 2 today so that they can be fully represented as we continue to vote for the budget and the capital plan. Whereas precinct 2 is one of the most affected by the flooding, they should really have a say in where we're going.
Okay, I'm gonna consider that motion out of order. First of all, we've gone through the process. I've stated the process at several meetings. Precinct 2 is absolutely 100% not being neglected. I've represented precinct 2 as well as the town, but represented precinct 2 for the past 20 years and have never neglected that precinct. We are in 100% on time and on schedule with mitigation of flooding at Tileston and Girdlestone.
I'd like to have a vote to move the question.
Motion's out of order. Moving on.
It's in old business. President Lettieri, it's in old business. We can move the question. That's in Robert's rules.
Councilor Tasnero, you have an awful lot to say tonight. There's gotta be a reason behind it, but we'll just move on. Precinct 2, council update.
Yeah, we'd like precinct 2 to be represented. We wanna fill the seat.
Precinct 2 is represented. And I would hope
By
that
this
any
chair?
councilor, I would hope any councilor at any meeting would represent this town. We're 1.6 square miles. I care about precinct 2 as much as I care about 1, 2, 3, 5, 4,
And they
5,
deserve a
7.
vote on the council. If
They
you care for
certainly do.
precinct 2, let's move the question. If you care, let's move the question.
If you didn't have an ulterior motive, Councilor Tasnero, I might consider it, but the motion is out of order. Fiscal 26 budget. Fiscal 26 budget. Councilor Aiello, you can ask.
So you don't wanna uphold the charter, you don't wanna vote for precinct 2.
Question of Robert's Rules of Order.
What do you wanna do here?
Called, you must address Robert's Rules of
What
Order.
do I wanna do? You don't even
That's
know
the
what I
rules.
want to do. I'd like to have a council that's a little more appropriate, a council that takes
And I'd like to have a president that enforces the
financial
charter
budget.
and a president that follows Robert's rules.
You're out of order.
That would be
You're out of
helpful.
order. Continue. Fiscal 26
And maybe a
budget.
president that's more transparent about
There you
what
go.
they're doing.
Fiscal 26 budget, boy, you could tell it's election season in the year when you have councils talking
I'm not
about
running.
that.
My seat's not open.
Some of us wish it was.
Mr. President, honestly.
Honestly.
Councilor Aiello, should you be speaking on
Yes, I should.
behavior? Is some of your behavior over
Because
the
you
past?
said you would take it, your responsibility.
Fiscal 26
to have
budget.
decorum.
Fiscal
And look what you're
26
doing,
budget.
Mr. Crown.
Fiscal 26 budget. Any discussion on it? Councilor Tasnero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's a good budget. I think the commission put a lot of work into reviewing it. I think the town manager, his finance staff, all the departments head, the superintendent and her finance staff put a ton of work into this year's budget. They're spinning gold out of flax, and it's not getting any easier for anyone. It's a level service budget all around, and as we've seen in the last 2 override situations, that there's a lot more to come should we continue on the path we're on. So if I just wanna say thank you, I guess. That's my whole point. Thank you to the commission and the finance committee and the citizens advisory committee.
Any other, Councilor?
Is this a time to discuss this budget a little bit more in depth for a few
We're
questions?
gonna
or-
go over the budget, I mean, usually and we've changed this over the past 3 years that we give the council usually 2 weeks or a week,
Right.
depending on the timing of the charter, to go over the budget and to make any potential amendments they choose to make. In many years past, they just voted on the budget after the presentation. I don't think that's fair. There's many councils that don't attend the finance commission's meetings for various reasons, and they don't have the opportunity to take a good look at all the recommendations. So this gives the council a week to take a look at the finance commission. Commissioner Pat Gorkowitz's presentation from tonight, so it gives the council an opportunity to come back with, if they have motions to make, coherent motions, with a debit and a credit to equal out. So we will have much more time to discuss this at our next meeting before voting on the budget.
I just have some questions, I don't have a motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alright. New business. Town council vote to adopt 2 sections of the HEROES Act. Just to describe briefly, the HEROES Act's given us the opportunity to give more of an abatement to veterans off their taxes. This will increase the reserve by 60,000 or so for veterans. This does not have an effect on the operating budget. We will be sending that to finance. Town council adopt annual general fund operating budget for fiscal year 26. We will set, these are all the motions coming from the report given by Matt and from the town manager's budget. These will will be going to finance for one more look at before they come back for our vote on next week. So town council adopt annual generating fund operating budget for fiscal year 26. Town council adopt annual revenue budgets for fiscal year 26. Town council adopt annual capital plan for fiscal 26. Town council adopt loss and rent enterprise fund budget for fiscal 26. Council adopt recreational enterprise fund budget for fiscal 26. Council adopt Harbor Master enterprise fund budget for fiscal 26. Council adopt water and sewer enterprise fund budget for fiscal 26. Council adopt solid waste enterprise fund budget for fiscal 26. Council vote to authorize unpaid bills of the prior year to be paid from the current department budgets. Town council vote to transfer 75,000 appropriation from general fund to a revolving account to close out fiscal 25. Town council vote to modify the general fund budgets to facilitate June 30th, 2025 closing of fiscal year 25. Town council vote to place Harbor Master Waterways Enterprise Fund under the authority of the Winthrop Police Chief beginning in fiscal 26. These will all be sent to finance. Town council appropriate $1,450,000 for the allocation of the Education Stabilization Fund. That will also be sent to finance, and just for clarification, that is the money that we will be receiving and starting in July of next year, the money that was voted on the override, that has to be appropriated by the council into the enterprise fund. So that's it, going to finance. Town council meeting scheduled June and July. We've talked about a little bit already. We have a meeting, a special meeting, a joint meeting with the planning board next Tuesday night at the senior center. Immediately following that meeting, we will have a special council meeting with one agenda item, and that one agenda item being the fiscal 26 budget. We will then have our regularly scheduled meeting June 17th. The reason for the special meeting, the charter states that the council must vote on a budget no less than 15 days from the new fiscal year. So the fiscal year starts July 1st. If we waited till the 17th, we would be in violation of that. So we will have the special meeting on the 10th. Just to go over July's meeting schedule, the current meeting schedule by the charter would be July 1st and July 18th. The 4th is on a Friday this year, so you're gonna have people on vacation the week of the 1st, you're gonna have people on vacation the week of the 8th. Town hall will be closed on the 8th. Just wanted to see if there's any if there's gonna be any attendance issues or anything else. If not, I am perfectly fine with keeping the meetings on the first and the 18th. First and the 15th. All right, seeing none, those department dates will stay. Public comments, number 2. Anyone on Zoom?
Kurt, everyone.
No.
We do have 2 on Zoom.
We go one on Zoom first, good.
Carol Meach?
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Council President. I'd like to know what the rules are for when someone's censured in decorum, because this is yet again another outspoken out of order discussion from Councilor Aiello. And this must be.
Carol, I
number 5
appreciate your
or
comments.
Point of
Let's
order,
try
Mr.
to
President.
just stay on topic here and not go into any personal attacks.
I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm curious to know what the rule of order is when someone has been censured.
Thank you. Yeah, again, it's public comment, Carol. I'm not responding to any comments, but I will clarify it at a subsequent meeting. But thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
One more and then we'll go.
2 more.
Oh, one more on Zoom, I believe.
Vasily?
Thanks, Denise. Facility Managers Precinct 1. I hope the air conditioning is on in that room tonight. It's getting a little hot. But just a reminder, Thursday night, 6:30, Winthrop says no to 3A standout outside the E.B. Newton School. We'd love to see everybody there. And then just one other thing. I'm not sure if there is a rule regarding etiquette, but cell phone use during a meeting, I'd expect that our counselors are all being attentive. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt, and then.
Kurt Millar, Precinct 2. I'm gonna change the tone a little bit here. We have a very sad notification from a business in town this week that they are closing. They've been a huge community supporter for everything since the day they've opened. So Drop Zone is closing, but on the 14th of June. But their last hurrah will be the I Love Winthrop Festival. And again, they're still looking for some vendors. They're selling t-shirts. You can go on the Winthrop Business Leadership Council on Facebook there, or you can stop by Drop Zone. They'll be open Thursday through the weekend. I've been happy to DJ this event previously in years past, and it's an amazing, fun time. It's sad to see that, we have a business closing and the last thing they wanna do is support Winthrop. So I hope the town comes out for this to enjoy the time that it's gonna be. There's a lot of fun stuff that's gonna be happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Mr. Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Concerning the tree on Bowden Street, I parked under that tree 100 times because I do work on it right next door. And when you're in my friend's house, there's a picture window, and all you see is the tree. The trunk of that tree was this wide. I haven't measured circumference, but I will. I don't know how it can be replaced. I don't think it can be replaced. Question that I'd like to get answered, if there's vandalism on a piece of town property, or there's destruction on a piece of town property, or something is stolen from the town of Winthrop, it's happened, I know that. Is there insurance on something, items that are stolen, say equipment, say, it's gone, it's missing, it's stolen? Do we have an insurance policy on items like that? I'd like to get the answer, but not right now. I mean, it has to be looked into, but as far as that tree is concerned, it was, there's pictures of that tree, from the sidewalk up. It was glorious, and now it's gone. Somebody has to be held accountable. I think someone's looking into it. It won't be me, but I think somebody else is. And just to get back some type of remuneration to plant more trees, because this was
I'm thinking it's over 200 years old, but you can't tell because the stems, the trunks, there's 4 trunks there, or 3 trunks, I forget what it was. So you really can't tell the age from the stumps. But, the other thing is, off topic, a different topic. There's been talk about transparency, across the board here today. And it was talked about that there's going to be more transparency with the boards and committees in this town. So I like to look, and so now there's water under the bridge, so I'm not gonna go backwards. But when you look at the minutes for some of these boards and committees, there are none. You talked about that a month ago, Jim. I wanna know if there's any progress being made. So I'm gonna forget about, the 20 minutes, 20 meetings that don't have minutes. Going forward, are they gonna be required to have an agenda and then have minutes approved at the next meeting of these boards and committees? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Harvey.
Erin Purcell, Precinct 5. I just wanted to follow up on in the first thing I said, I didn't know the name of the thing I was talking about. In response to the 3A, the noted 3A standout that will be in front of the EB Newton school on Thursday at 6:30. At 7 o'clock inside of that building, there will be a let's talk about housing, a community conversation forum. It has absolutely nothing to do with 3A. So I just want to say, everyone just, if you're interested, just go there and don't just assume it has things to do with 3A. Come and find out. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, just wanna say, Mike Killen, Precinct 2. Yeah, I would assume that the next meeting I'm gonna be talking mostly about myself, which is odd to think about. So I will take this moment to say, regarding 3A, sort of as it's come up tonight, explicitly, implicitly, some of the things we hear in some of the ways that we find ourselves talking and relating to one another, I think you'd be hard pressed to go back, in the time that I've lived in this town and find a more divisive issue, right? So this has changed the way that we look at each other. It's colored everything. You can say for better or for worse. Mostly it feels like for worse. And there is a time, and again, that time is now, where everyone needs to learn to work collaboratively with people who are not agreeing on this issue. And to Rob's point, it's been voted no. There'll be a planning board meeting, the same plan will be put forward again, it will get voted no on again, I'm quite certain. And where do we go from there? It feels like there are people in this town who have a stake in really keeping this dividing line alive and continuing to color everybody with that. And I won't talk to this person won't talk to me. We are in such a precarious financial position with the override passing, but all of these factors tugging from this end and this end and this end, just trying to take that money that everybody's just, put into the kitty here in one way or another until we're, in another deficit. And it can't be this way. And I didn't want to talk about this during the interviews because there were other things to talk about during the interview. But I would hope that the people listening to this on Zoom and the people in this room just understand this issue can't live forever in a way that's going to be used as a cudgel to just beat each other with. We can't build a community that way. We can't maintain a community that way. And that's what I have to say about it. Thank you.
And one more.
Caitlin Burrows.
Hi, Caitlin Burrows, Precinct 1. Just wanted to hop on and make sure that I had an opportunity to plug some of the upcoming community pride events that we're planning to celebrate Pride Month in Winthrop. There are two on the upcoming Saturday on the 7th. We're having a Pride Ride at Ingleside Park starting at 2 o'clock, and then Pride Potluck also at Ingleside Park from 2 to 6. And then there's a Pride Pub Crawl that is happening starting at 4 p.m. on Saturday the 14th. And all the information about these events is up on winthroppride.com if you're interested in coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Alright, well, took all my thunder there with the public relations, upcoming events, nomination papers for local elections. The elections are November 4th, 2025, available at the town clerk's office. Please participate on the 2025 Community Health Needs Assessment. Take a look at the town website for more information. Again, as just stated, June 7th, Pride Potluck, Ingleside Park, 2 to 6. June 14th, Pride Pub Crawl, Drop Zone Brewery at 4 o'clock. June 21st, the annual Strawberry Festival at the Dean Winthrop House. And June 21st, the I Love Winthrop Festival, which will be at French Square. Motion to adjourn?
Jim, real quick, just before we adjourn, if I could, and Tony, maybe you can help me answer this. I know that unfortunately Mother Nature is maybe threatening us with yet another rainy Saturday. It looks it's iffy for the weather on Saturday for Pride, for the Pride Potluck. It says a rain date of June 8th. That's still the plan?
I gotta check, but I think Sean might have something else booked for the gazebo that day, so I'm not sure that's the name. Sean mentioned that today, so I can talk to him.
Scott had said that Sunday was the rain date.
That's Sunday, the rain date, okay.
Yeah. I think there's a birthday party or something scheduled for the gazebo or something. Sunday, so we have to double check with that.
Will we somehow let folks know
Yes,
that
absolutely.
Pride is
We might have to go.
postponed
Oh, well, yeah,
to the rain date the next day,
maybe, or another date, yeah.
alternatively?
Yeah.
Let's hope we get clear weather, but I just thought
That's
I'd
the
mention
easiest way. That's the easiest way.
Motion.
Motion by Council Swope, second by Vice President Belcher. Any discussion on the motion? Probably not. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion carries.